Hello, and welcome back to my world of stuff. Yes, that's right. If you saw my community post that went up towards the end of last week, I threw a hissy fit and said I'm not going to do any more Spider-Man film reviews because nobody's watching them. And it's true, The Amazing Spider-Man 3 only got 24 views, but then as somebody pointed out, it's The Amazing Spider-Man 3. Good point, well made. Anyway, as a YouTuber, I reserve my right to change my mind and indeed my opinion whenever it suits me. Welcome back to Spider-Man Revisited. In 2015, Sony Pictures decided to do the right thing. Having run their version of Spider-Man into the ground via 3 Tobey Maguire films and 2 Andrew Garfield films, I think they realised that perhaps they didn't quite know exactly what to do with old Webhead. The second Andrew Garfield film, reviewed last week, hadn't done brilliantly. I mean, we're talking about a film which took over 700 million at the box office. But it was at that point the lowest rated Spider-Man film since the character had come to the screen in 2002. Sony, obviously a little bit worried about declining fortunes, and teamed up with Marvel to let the character bleed fairly effortlessly into the MCU, because the MCU by now was up and running, doing extremely well with a string of commercially successful and hugely popular films that were, frankly, generating obscene amounts of money. Thus was born in 2016 Tom Holland's take on Peter Parker's Spider-Man with a little cameo in the superb Captain America Civil War, which led the next year to Tom's first appearance as Spider-Man himself in the first of what's become known as the Home Trilogy, Homecoming, which saw Tom Holland flying pretty much solo. What a great film. I've just rewatched this. It's back in cinemas now, very briefly. By the time you see this video, it's probably gone. But you can find it on Netflix. That's where I watched it this morning. It's a great film. It really is a very good film. And it is clear to see that this is a very different take on Spider-Man. It's Spider-Man. He looks like Spider-Man. He's Peter Parker. It's got all the accoutrements of Spider-Man that we know. But this is a younger, skewing version of the character, starring the great Tom Holland, who I think at the time when this was made was about 20, and he's playing a 15-year-old. And he's blessed, a bit like me, he's a Peter Pan of the movie industry. He never ages. He just looks the same. He's very youthful looking, basically. So he can pull off being a 14 or 15-year-old. And he does it very well. And the film has a charm to it. And it plays so easily into what Marvel were doing very well at the time. Comic strips, superhero adventures, high drama, comedy. It feels effortless. It just fits in with how good the MCU was at the time. And in fact, watching it again today, you do sort of think, what a shame the wheels have come off a bit over the last few years. And they're finding it harder to get this feeling into their films now. They've lost something. It's undeniable that they've lost something. And I think when you revisit something like this, you see that what they've lost is that charm. And it is a charming film. The film's very clever. It takes its cue from 2 other films, of course. We start off with a pre-title sequence, which introduces us to Michael Keaton as Adrian Toomes. He's the boss of a construction business that has been tasked with clearing up all the debris from the Battle of New York in the Avengers in 2012. He's making good money out of it. He's invested in new equipment and new staff, and he's salvaging all this alien tech, exotic material as it's called, until he's interrupted by a government company who tell him to cease operations and that they'll be responsible for it in future. This is causing him enormous alarm and financial distress. He's already secured some alien tech. We flash forward 8 years where he has used this tech and developed it, and has been able to adapt it and sell it to the criminal fraternity. So he's making some quite good money. He's got a team of people working with him, scientists and so on, who can understand this stuff and adapt it. Meanwhile, we meet up with Peter Parker in a very nice scene, which takes us back to the events of Civil War. It's done as a sort of found footage type thing of Peter doing his own video vlog about being hustled over to Germany by Happy Hogan, played as usual by Jon Favreau. And we see him sort of behind the scenes changing into his costume, and we see him from his point of view about to enter into the battle at the airport, which is still one of the great MCU action scenes. It's really very well done. It's very clever, and it just reminds us how well Marvel weaved all this stuff together and how it was so zeitgeisty at the time. And again, it's so frustrating that that slipped away a bit. We then get into the story of Peter as a high school kid, and again we see Tom Holland as a young fresh-faced boy. He's not exactly an outsider in the way that, say, Tobey Maguire was, but he's sort of struggling a little bit. By now, he is Spider-Man. We haven't got to go through the origin of Spider-Man again, thank God. He is Spider-Man, but he's very much a friendly neighbourhood Spider-Man. He isn't all tooled up as yet. He's finding his feet. He wants to become an Avenger, but Tony Stark, a nice cameo, a couple of scenes from Robert Downey Jr., and again, you sort of realise what a linchpin he was of the MCU in those early days, and how much we miss him as Iron Man. He tells Peter that he's not ready to become an Avenger. He has to sort of learn his trade and grow up a little bit. So we have a couple of scenes of Spider-Man doing what he does, foiling crimes and so on. And he foils one particular crime, which is a bank robbery, where the crooks are using some pretty advanced tech, including a shocking device, which sends power bolts. And it's obvious that this is tech that these people shouldn't have. And Peter wants to find out what it is and where it's come from. He gets attacked by the Vulture. This is Michael Keaton now in a huge mechanical Vulture suit. Now, of course, the Vulture is one of Spider-Man's earliest adversaries in the comics. Portrayed in the comics as this rather sad bald man in a feathered costume. That wouldn't wash today, so we've got a more high-tech version of the Vulture suit. And it's odd because in the last Spider-Man film that we saw, we had that terrible mechanical rhino costume that Paul Giamatti was bolted into in the end sequence. That seemed clumsy and awkward and odd. The Vulture's costume seems more naturalistic. It is the sort of mechanical device that somebody would possibly create from alien tech. So it works a lot better. He already has a couple of battles with the Vulture. He can't get Tony Stark and Happy Hogan interested in this alien tech because the Avengers are moving from their old tower headquarters to a new base outside New York. So he has to go it alone. That gets him into conflict with the Vulture more than once. A couple of really big action sequences on a ferry, which is sort of torn apart. Iron Man comes along and helps out, and that's when he sort of clashes with Peter. He tells him that perhaps he's not quite ready yet to become the superhero that he needs to be. It all escalates and it all snowballs, ultimately, and the most exciting, in fact, the best scene in the film, I think, is the one where Peter is going to a high school prom with his date Liz, only to discover that her father is Adrian Toomes, the Vulture himself. Peter realises this, but Adrian doesn't realise until he's driving them to the prom. And you can see realisation dawning. He recognises Peter's voice, and he puts two and two together from things that he hears about Peter disappearing all the time. He realises who Peter is, and he sort of warns him, stay out of my way, stay out of my business. But of course, Peter is Spider-Man, he can't do that. And eventually he's pitched into battle with the Vulture, who's trying to steal the tech that's on board the Avengers plane as it's heading to its new base. It's a great film. It really is so enjoyable. And like I say, what is so good about it is that youthful energy that it's got. It feels new, it feels fresh. Peter feels like this young kid full of energy and ambition, and he wants to be a superhero. He wants to be an Avenger, but he's finding his feet, finding his way. And it's just such good fun. There are some really good witty sequences in the way that Marvel did it at its best. This is when Marvel was focusing on wit rather than comedy. You see things like the most recent Thor films, which have gone into comedy. And as I have said, and I keep on saying, I think there's always a place for wit in drama. But if it's drama, it's drama. You can be witty, but don't try to be funny. Don't be a comedy. It's a very fine line, and that it's very easy to cross into parody and into comedy, and you lose the drama. But I think that this walks it really well, as Marvel did so well with these little quips and one-liners and very naturalistic comedic observations which work very well. It's a great cast, of course. Tom Holland is great. Probably, I've come to really have a new appreciation for Tobey Maguire, but Tom Holland is right up there. And of course, he's very experienced now. He's done his 3 solo films. He was in Civil War. He was in the Infinity War and Endgame. So he's an old hand at Spider-Man, but here he's new and fresh. But he's great. He has an exuberance and energy about him, which is really captivating and really drags you into the story and drags you into his story. In terms of the rest of the cast, I was quite surprised, bearing in mind how important she's become later in the films, what a small part Zendaya plays as MJ. In fact, we don't even know she's MJ until virtually the last scene. She's there in the background, pretty much almost as an extra. She has a few lines here and there, but she's a fairly minor character. And that's quite odd, especially when we think that Zendaya is now this huge star from things like Euphoria, the TV series that she was in, and of course Challengers, the film which came out this year. She really is a huge major star now, and I believe she's still Tom Holland's partner in real life. Another mention for Jacob Batalon, who is so funny as Ned Leeds, Peter's best friend. He has a lot of the comic heft here. His banter with Peter is so funny, especially when he finds out that Peter is Spider-Man. Really very funny, and he's got this sort of puppy dog exuberance about him. He wants to help, he wants to do the right thing, but he's bursting with the fact that he's got this incredible secret about his best friend. Of course, Michael Keaton, well, we've just seen him in Beetlejuice. We know how good Michael Keaton is, one of the best actors still working these days. He is great in this, and he brings quite a mature malevolence for such a young hero. He is quite a ruthless, hard villain, quite tough. And, you know, as he says to Peter Parker when he discovers who he is, if you get in my way again, I'll kill you, and I'll kill everyone you love. I mean, that's quite tough for a film which is aimed at a sort of a younger audience, despite a few little fruity bits of effing and cheffing here and there. And, of course, I need to mention Aunt May. This is a very different Aunt May to the one that we've seen previously. We had, of course, Rosemary Harris. We had Sally Field. And now we've got Marissa Tomei. I mean, Aunt May, Aunt Wood. Yeah, stunning. And it's no wonder that Happy Hogan falls for her later on in the series. It's just a great fun, joyous film. And it's so exciting and so thrilling. And it feels like the start of a new direction for Spider-Man, which indeed it was, which has led to the 3 films which we've now had, and I will be reviewing each of those. It seems silly to give up the series so close to the end. It's absolutely sparkling. It's not the best Spider-Man film. I still think that the original Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 are probably better, but it's clearly better than Spider-Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. So I think it's sort of mid-range, but it's so good. It makes you realise how good all the Spider-Man films have been in a way, despite occasional misfires, that a film as good as this is a mid-ranker. Absolutely superb. It's in cinemas now on Sunday. Probably won't be there tomorrow, but as I said, you can find it on Netflix. But it's nice to get these films back out there and to get a new cinema audience and help remind us how good Marvel was when it was on the top of its game. Spider-Man Homecoming's a good 8 out of 10 movie. Right, thank you for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this video. If you are new here, don't forget to do the decent thing. Like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, particularly subscribe. Press that button, wherever, I can never work out where it is. Press that button, subscribe, and look back at the previous videos, all sorts of guff on this channel to do with genre film and TV and books and collectibles and all sorts of stuff. So you're sure to find something that you like, which means you need to subscribe. I will see you soon. Keep taking the stuff.